Okay, today we are going to have a little chat with Paul MacKinnon, and he will going to introduce who he is. And first of all, before we start, Paul, public disclosure. We are just chatting for fun. Mm. You are not paying me. I'm not paying you.
You're not paying me?
Okay. No.
All right. Well, I'll stay in.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So this is just a friendly chat. So this is how we're going to start, and we just want to make sure that no, this is not a paid advertisement. I'm doing these YouTube videos for fun, and also because of my inbox, some people ask me how's the education institution looks like in Atlantic Canada. So I did one video before, and I know Paul for a few years now. He's a business kind of advocate, so I might as well talk to Paul. So would you tell us your name and your position in this organization?
Sure. So my name is Paul MacKinnon. Mm-hmm. I'm the CEO of the Downtown Halifax Business Commission. And what the Downtown Halifax Business Commission is, it's a business improvement district for downtown Halifax. We have 1,600 businesses, both landlords and tenants, in downtown Halifax. They fund this association. I work for a board of directors, which is made up of business people in the downtown Halifax community. So our focus really is on the urban core of the city. But again, we of course have interest in the overall business climate of Halifax and Nova Scotia and Atlantic Canada. And certainly immigration is one of those huge topics in the business community. It's very important.
Mm-hmm. Good. So by the way, I will later put down the link and the site of this organization in my channel. And one thing that if people want to call you, or you or somebody, or you gave yourself a nickname called Downtownpaul.
Yes.
So do you think it is that appropriate, or how does it reflect you being the Downtownpaul?
Well, it's interesting. I like to think of myself as one of the early, even though I'm still not on, I personally am still not on Facebook, but I went to a course talking about different social media trends years and years ago. And in that course, they talked about here's what Twitter is good for, here's what it's not good for. And so I got on there pretty early and was lucky enough to be able to still put in, this is when everyone was using nicknames. I thought, well, Downtownpaul, it kind of rolls off the tongue. It kind of explains in one name kind of what I'm all about, which is about downtowns. And so I've got a very large social media following on Twitter.
Oh yes, I know. I'm one of the followers.
Yeah, and which is a lot of fun, and we have kind of more corporate ones too for downtown Halifax, and we're on all the social media platforms with our organization. But I'm personally on Twitter, but mostly it's work related. It's mostly the tweets and links that I put out are about downtowns, not just downtown Halifax, but kind of urban cores and how they're driving the economy around the world. So yeah, it's so a lot of people they'll see me on the street and say, hey, Downtownpaul.
Good. So since you are a promoter of Halifax, especially downtown, or maybe just not totally downtown, but Halifax as a whole, what do you think? How do you think Halifax as a city to live in, to work in, to do business with?
I think it's a great time. I think in Halifax has had an interesting past and history. It's not a city that really kind of goes through big highs and lows. It's got a pretty stable economy. It's traditionally been a military town, a government town, a university town. And so the joke is that when the economy's really taking off out west, we don't really feel that. But the good news is the flip side of it is when there's a financial collapse, we don't feel that as much either. It seems to be kind of a steady pace. And really probably the last time that Halifax really was a really dynamic, booming city on the rise was probably during World War II. And since then, it's kind of been slowly climbing. But at this point in time, I think it's a really good time in Halifax. Most of the economic indicators are pretty strong. The economy's going very well. There's population growth. The last couple of years, we've been kind of breaking records in terms of our population growth. It's still pretty modest compared to some other cities. But I think one of the great things about Halifax is, when you look at us compared to other Canadian cities, it's still very much more affordable than certainly the Montreals, Torontos, Vancouver's, those places. It's got a great quality of life where you've got a vibrant urban core, but you're 15 minutes away from being out in the middle of the woods and enjoying nature, and not a lot of cities can boast that. So great quality of life, good economy, very opening and welcome atmosphere, especially for immigrants, which again is not the case in every Western country, certainly, and not in every city. So certainly for people that are looking to make Canada their home, there's a great I think great business case and quality of life case to be made for Halifax.
Yeah. Actually, I was just reading for statistics from Statistics Canada's site, and it seems Halifax population growth rate is over 4%.
Right.
And which is, even compared with Toronto basis, it is high, 4%.
Yeah, and that's very, it's very recent. I'd say over just the past couple of years, it really has spiked a bit. And that's being driven by a couple of things. One of the things that's driving it, frankly, is that for the first time in decades, we're no longer losing more young people. So for years and years and years, if you kind of look at that sweet cohort of people, kind of between the age of 25 and 40, which every city wants to attract those people and maintain those people. We were losing more people than we were gaining in that particular age group, university age people. That is now reversed in the last couple of years, so that's been really helpful. And then immigration really is what's driving the population growth at this point in time. So we've been exceeding our immigration targets, and for an aging population like Nova Scotia has, it's really important that the only way to grow population is to either have more babies or attract more people to come and live here, and so we haven't been as successful in having more babies necessarily, but in terms of attracting people, whether they're coming from other places in Canada or from other countries around the world, has been going very well lately, and we're hoping that will continue.
Well, it is fine for attracting people to say, okay, come to Halifax, gorgeous city, and housing prices is still quite affordable. Okay, after I move here, for a lot of immigrants, how am I going to live? Is finding an employment difficult in Halifax?
Well, I mean, certainly for someone moving to a new country that maybe doesn't speak the language. I mean, it's always a big challenge. I'm always constantly amazed when immigrants are able to pick up from their old life and their culture and come to Canada and be successful. I think the good news is we've got way more supports than we've had in a long time. I think probably you could say, and you've been here, could speak this better than I have, having lived in Halifax, as an immigrant for a long time, is that Halifax in the Maritimes has always been it's a friendly place. People are friendly, but not necessarily always welcoming, in the sense that I think for a long time newcomers had a hard time really kind of getting into the community and being welcomed, and it hasn't been a terribly diverse population for a long time, but that's really changed. I think over the past couple of years there's been this real kind of messaging, I think, from the governments and from the business community saying, immigration is important. So it's important that immigrants have supports when they arrive, that they have opportunities when they arrive, that if the future, one of the strong features is through entrepreneurship, immigrants are more likely to be entrepreneurial than people from Canada.
It is.
So I think there's been kind of a much broader acceptance from the community to say, immigration is important, but it doesn't just happen on its own. We need to have supports, and so. Over the past couple of years, there's been a number of new programs and organizations that have dedicated themselves to helping immigrants in terms of just kind of assimilating to society from a cultural standpoint, but in helping them in terms of starting up businesses and making connections in the business community. So I talked about a couple of those programs if you want.
Okay, please. Yeah. Actually, that's my next question.
Okay, that's your next
Are there any?
I got the questions in advance. So.
Are there any? What kind of opportunities for new immigrants to start up their own business, big or small?
Yeah. Well, so there's a couple of groups that I'll mention. One is called ISANS, which is the Immigrant Settlement Association of Nova Scotia. And their whole organization is really dedicated towards kind of a broader, it's not just about business, I guess it's about the broader way that immigrants can come and find a home in this community. So ISANS does a lot of great work. They've got a whole bunch of different programs. From the business side of things, there's a couple of organizations that do work in this area. One is the Halifax Partnership, which has a couple of programs. One's called the Connector program, which I'm a volunteer with, and it's really just a very simple program. It's really about they have connectors and connectees. So if you're a new immigrant and you're just looking to make connections in the business community, they set up this service where they'll set up just a coffee chat with a business leader, in your field. So say if you're an immigrant, you're a recent accounting student, and you're looking to get a job in the accounting world, they would set you up with a senior business leader in that field, and they would just meet with you, have coffee, talk with you about whatever connections you might want to make, and then they set up kind of 3 other meetings from that initial meeting. And so they've had a very high success rate in terms of just getting people out in the community, because this was one of the challenges was, you can imagine you've got employers looking to hire someone, and they get a resume, and it's a name that's unfamiliar to them, and so they maybe they've got concerns about how this person's obviously an immigrant, how are their language skills, how are their other skills. We want to try and break down those barriers, and just getting people out into the community, meeting people is one. That's kind of the program. They also have a program called the Atlantic Immigration Pilot, which is really more about how to make it easier for immigrant entrepreneurs, to secure loans and put
Is that the one called AIPP?
Atlantic Immigration Pilot Program, possibly. Yeah, it sounds
okay.
like,
Okay.
Which I believe it's got some provincial funding, but it's run out of the Halifax Partnership Office as well.
Oh, okay.
NSBI, Nova Scotia Business Inc. has a whole bunch of different business programs, both for immigrants and non-immigrants. And also the Halifax Chamber of Commerce, certainly over the past couple of years, again, I think has really been very proactive in promoting the need for more immigration and creating a more welcoming business climate for immigrants. So there's a whole bunch of, and I would say, if you went back 10, 15 years ago, these programs weren't operating.
No, never heard of.
Yeah. So
when I came here,
yeah,
you sink or swim, tough luck if you can't make it,
Yeah. You came at the wrong time. You should have come. Now. So and that's not to say that it's ever easy for someone to come here and start a whole new life, but certainly there's a lot more supports in Halifax in particular now than there ever has been before. So yeah. And I would say, and much more. I mean, the other piece of it is there's a much more diverse population. So again, what we know is that when people come to a new country, I mean, they're looking for connections with community from people from their own cultures. And so if the easiest way to have more people come from Hong Kong is to have a bunch of people from Hong Kong already here that they can immediately connect with. So it's kind of, you gain momentum as you attract more immigrants. It's easier than to retain immigrants.
True, because they have they kind of intentionally or unintentionally form their supporting network.
Right.
The end, right? So you mentioned about the business climate. What do you think, since you are the coordinator or promoter of businesses here, what do you think right now the business environment climate in Halifax?
Well, there's a little bit of a gap between, I think, our aspirations and what's actually happening. But I think overall it's good in that both levels of government, both provincial and municipal here in Halifax, I mean, they really want to promote this as a business-friendly environment, particularly around innovation and entrepreneurship. Because I think just when we look at those trends, you look at where is employment being created? It's really being created by entrepreneurs. As much as we hear about large businesses, doesn't seem to be what's driving the new jobs being created. It's really through entrepreneurship and tech startups or business startups. And so there is certainly the governments recognize that, and they're trying to make things easier. Now it's always tough for governments because they're bureaucratic animals, and there's always lots of hoops to jump through, and which can be very difficult. So, but there's some really interesting things happening again in Halifax. One of the initiatives is called the Innovation District, which is looking at the assets that we have here. You've talked about, we've got this great cluster of these amazing universities. Way more per capita than probably any other city.
Oh yes, we have the highest per capita in Canada.
Yeah,
university.
You've got those great things happening. We've got all these ocean related PhDs that are here. I mean, there's a lot of really neat things happening in Halifax, and so the Innovation District is really just meant to kind of connect all those things in kind of a geographic way and say, what are the support systems that we need in place, to allow innovation to happen, to kind of break down the red tape barriers that exist and really help make it easier for people that want to try new concepts, especially in terms of technology. So there's a couple of interesting initiatives like that that are happening. So and it is being both business and government driven. So again, I think it's there's a lot of optimism in Halifax right now.
Oh, good. Yes.
And one of the great
I can feel it right now.
Yeah, and one of the great things about Halifax, I think, is that it's a nice sized city. You know, we're kind of knocking on the door of 500,000 population, but you know, to make changes, especially at a political level, it's very hard in a giant city. You know, in a city that's got 3 or 4 million people, it's hard to make big changes. In a smaller city, you can do that. And so a lot of the literature that we're looking at now in terms of which cities are really good places to invest and to put your money on, it's those mid-sized cities that recognize that they've got some advantages. One of them is to be a bit more nimble.
Yeah. Last count, I think I read something, Halifax right now is like 450,000, but we are getting to the 500,000 mark. So, yes. Yeah. So, can you tell us some success stories in immigrant success story in Halifax?
Right. Yeah. The couple that come to mind. One gentleman I'm a big fan of, and we've had the opportunity to work a bit together. Is a guy named Ifeanyi Emesi. So he came here, I believe, as a student from Nigeria, and I think he just enjoyed his experience as an immigrant in Halifax so much that he really wanted to. I think similar to what you're doing, he wanted to promote Halifax as this is a great place for people to come as immigrants and start a new life and connect with people. And so he's done a couple of things. One of the things he's created is this magazine called My Halifax Experience, which you haven't seen, which is all about celebrating immigration success stories. It's kind of Halifax centric, but he talks a bit about the broader Atlantic provinces and the Maritimes as well. He's also hosting a gala. This is I think it's the 5th year of this event, which is and he actually it's a gala that gives out awards honoring immigrants who've come here and made a success. And again, part of that way to inspire immigrants to think that they can come here and be successful is to highlight and celebrate those who've already done that.
Maybe I have to connect with him too.
You should be getting one of these awards. Now, I'm not in the selection committee, but I'm emceeing the event this year, which is happening in January. So
maybe if you can get me a ticket to go.
Yeah, you can come as my date. Except I'll be up front, so I don't even know if I get supper at this. But anyway, but Ifeanyi, he's also created the Mosaic Festival on the waterfront, which again is a festival celebrating multiculturalism, which takes place in the Halifax waterfront. This was its 2nd year this past summer. So he's someone again that I think just because he's been able to come here, be successful, but really has then taken that success in terms of giving back, you know, and trying to create more people like him that can come here and be successful. So that's a great example of a success story. He'd be a great person to chat with.
Good. That's well.
Good. Someone else that kind of everyone is talking about now is Tarek from Peace by Chocolate. He's got such a great story. Who came here as part of the Syrian refugees that came over.
It is not just Halifax, not just Nova Scotia. It's a Canadian and global.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's not. I guess he's actually based in from our perspective, a little town, Antigonish, but has come here and actually went back to kind of the family business, which was making chocolate, and has created this amazing company that makes chocolate, but really uses that as a platform to really talk about peace. So they're called Peace by Chocolate, and he's been. I mean, he gets a lot of profile. You see him everywhere.
Oh yes, yes.
Now I think he spends much more of his time just doing public speaking now than he's got other folks that are making the chocolates. Yeah. But it's great if you're passing through Antigonish, you can stop by and get some chocolate. But you can get it in other places as well. So there's a couple of examples of 2 very different people that came, but kind of a similar story that they came and I think both their cases they kind of followed their passions. That's what allowed them to be successful.
Okay. Now, that's my channel. I intend to, and right now the target audience are mostly either in Hong Kong or from Hong Kong.
Yeah.
So most Hong Kongers, they have no idea where Halifax is. They can't even spell the name, right? So they heard of Vancouver, they heard of Toronto, they heard of Calgary, they heard of Montreal. Well, they speak French in Montreal, that's all they know. And Immigrants, as you know, in Canada, it's called the MTV.
Right.
Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver. Can you tell? Can you speculate why, or can you suggest are there any ways to break this trend or break this mold?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I had a conversation with a gentleman who moved here from Vancouver just recently, and in talking to him, he said, the only reason he came here was because his daughter went to Acadia University. So when he came to bring her out, he came to the airport and before going to Wolfville to Acadia, they looked around Halifax. He thought, wow, I had no idea that Halifax looked like this, that things were happening in Halifax. And he said, people in Vancouver haven't heard of Halifax, let alone people in Hong Kong. And so we are this great little secret. And I think the other thing working against us is that sometimes there's a lot of misperceptions. Right, so when people think about Halifax, they think, well, it's bitterly cold. Well, we actually
I heard that. You guys have to wear the down jacket in the summer.
When we've probably got after Vancouver in terms of average temperatures, we're probably the second warmest of the big Canadian cities. So there's some misperceptions to kind of break with that, but it is. I think we probably require Halifax and Nova Scotia requires a whole new effort, even amongst our neighbors in Canada and the U.S. about what a great little but rising city we are. But internationally, it really is about trying to figure out how to get our name out there. And I think the best thing we have to sell is this overall quality of life package. Mm-hmm. There are business opportunities here. That the cost of living still is better than it is in a lot of other places. And it is really this amazing place that's on the rise. But it is a challenge, and I can't think that I don't think there's one organization that does that, around the world. Certainly we have efforts around tourism in terms of getting people to come here and visit. That's part of it.
Oh, yes.
Attracting conventions, which is something that we do quite well here. But in terms of just an overall, promotional effort around getting people to move here from everywhere around the world, that's probably something that's missing, and that other cities invest a lot of time and money into doing, and we probably don't. So it is, but again, it can be initiatives like this, and one of my colleagues, Ivy Ho, her parents came here from Hong Kong, 50 years ago, and so I was asking her, she grew up in Fredericton, so I thought, well, how did a family from Hong Kong think to come to Canada and come to Fredericton? In that case, it was just her godfather, her father had a friend that lived in Fredericton who was part of sponsoring him to come over, and he started a small business in Fredericton. But it was that connection. So again, I think a lot of it is back to building those personal connections, and the more that we can attract people from Hong Kong to live here, then there's a base of support here for more people to come. So it can be, it doesn't have to be a giant marketing effort. It can be a bunch of small efforts like what you're doing here. So which is great.
Well, I just hope that my effort or my kind of this adventure will promote a little bit on Halifax on my part. So, okay, can you tell us something unique about Halifax? Yes, a lot of Vancouverites, Torontonians, they heard of Halifax. It's lobster. You talk to most Chinese, heard of Halifax, oh, lobster.
Right.
Actually, a lot of them, they think, okay, Boston lobster, now it is Halifax or Nova Scotian lobsters. Right. Okay, lobster is great here, but what other things can be of interest in for any immigrants or especially Hong Kongers?
Yeah, well, I found a very obscure but interesting stat when I was searching this. So it was about the percentage of new Canadian of immigrants that came here and how many of them later became Canadian citizens. And Hong Kong was one of those top ones. So for whatever reason, people that come from Hong Kong do like it so much that they stay and become Canadian citizens. So I thought that was interesting. There wasn't an overall number. That was something like that.
I didn't know that.
90% of people that come from Hong Kong to Halifax end up staying and becoming Canadians.
Oh,
so that was interesting.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, but I think the other big piece of it is we're in terms of geography, we are we're this amazing peninsula. But in terms of our city here, we've got this great urban environment in downtown Halifax, which is really undergoing a transformational change in terms of the development that's happening, and so we're getting a bit of that big city vibe. But again, you can hop on a bus or hop in your car, and 10 minutes later you're out in the middle of the woods. Oh yeah, I really think that's and we kind of take it for granted here, I think. But if you're living in Vancouver or Montreal and Toronto, you can't do that. You're sitting in a freeway for a long time to ever get out and see a tree and walk on a trail. So I think it's one of those assets that we need to protect. We need to make sure that we maintain those those assets and not just have suburban sprawl everywhere, but really promote that, because I think it's something that's a unique feature here that you can be a city dweller and love the country and experience it all the time.
Because for me, as an example, I live in a suburb, within 20 minutes, if there's no traffic jam, I can come right downtown in the waterfront or go to Point Pleasant Park, literally in the middle of the woods.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's something that Torontonians probably are dying for it.
Right.
Literally dying for it.
Yeah.
So you mentioned quite a bit of support networks here. So are there any other support network for employment? And you talk about the Connect and all that. Are there any others that you can mention?
Well, certainly there's, I mean, those are more related, I guess, to people that are looking to start a business and access capital or funding or whatever. There's a whole bunch of other programs that once you've got your business started. So a good example ourselves is we don't offer a lot of programs for businesses that are starting up. But once you're established physically in the downtown, then there's a whole bunch of programs that we offer as well, and the Chamber of Commerce would be another example of a group. So I mean, I think the newer programs are really about, if you're an immigrant coming here and looking to start a business or get hired, there's some new programs around that, which is beneficial. But once you're in the business community, again, one of the nice things about Halifax is it's still small enough that you can get connected very quickly within the existing business community, and there's a whole bunch of organizations that can help you do that, us being one. We're just in downtown Halifax, but there's actually 8 different business commissions in the city. So depending where you are, there's different ways to connect with those other groups, which all do great work. Chamber of Commerce is another example, which is across the entire city. So
yes.
I've always found that kind of once you're in the business community here, it is pretty easy to get to know people pretty quickly. It is a very friendly place.
Oh yes.
And people are always kind of willing to help. So there's some official networks, and then there's just unofficial ways to get to meet people.
Good. Okay. So are there anything you want to add?
Well, I'd like to announce here that in the next municipal election, I will not be running for mayor. So there you go. You heard it here first.
Yes, okay. So this is Paul MacKinnon, and he will not run for mayor. So, okay, thank you very much for such a nice introduction. And hope that I will hook up with some of those people you mentioned, and I can introduce some of those for our viewers. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.